Justice League. I really love the Superman films from the 70s. Dark Knight's really good, but I haven't really been a big fan of this DCEU. I thought Man of Steel was alright. I enjoyed it for what it was. I really enjoyed the first 2/3, 3/4 of the movie. Superman did something I didn't think Superman would do. I think they disrespected the character of Superman a little bit. But he was just beginning to be Superman. He didn't have all this history behind him. And I think he needs to learn how to be Superman. And this arc with the Superman character from Man of Steel, from Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice into Justice League was very good. There were a whole lot of problems plaguing the production of Justice League. You had the film being mostly shot, and then they were going to do rewrites on the script, they were going to do reshoots, and the director, Zack Snyder's daughter, tragically passed away. So he left on the production and handed the keys to the car over to Joss Whedon. And Joss Whedon is my guy. I love Joss Whedon. Creator of Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Firefly, writer on Toy Story, directed Serenity, The Avengers, Avengers Age of Ultron. And I have not been the biggest fan of the DCEU, and although it was all building up to Justice League, there was a strong chance I would have passed on Justice League, but they got my man Joss Whedon in the driver's seat, and Justice League is very much a Joss Whedon film. The dialogue is witty, the dialogue is quippy, and this dialogue is rapid fire joke, 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 joke. And the DCEU has been dark, and they have been gritty, and they've been doing the opposite of Marvel. This is more in line with Marvel's was doing, and I really think that this helped Justice League. I came in trying to avoid reviews. I saw the Rotten Tomatoes meter, and it's at 39%, I believe. And people don't understand what Rotten Tomatoes is. That's not, this is a terrible movie. This movie splits the audience down the middle. There's a lot of people that really like this movie. There's people that don't. You got about roughly 4 out of 6 people say, yeah, I enjoyed this film. And I am in the minority, and I said, I enjoyed Justice League so much. You had reshoots. You had the tone of the movie change at the last minute. And other people, the actors, they've moved on to other projects. They were filming other projects, and they had to come back and work on Justice League. You had Henry Cavill, which his next movie after this is Mission Impossible 6. He grew a big, bushy mustache, and they had to digitally remove that with special effects. A lot of people saying that was distracting. I didn't notice, and it didn't distract from the movie. Some people saying the CGI, the computer-generated images, aren't up to snuff, aren't up to par with other films. I was not distracted. I didn't even notice it. I was noticing the great characterization of Cyborg, the great characterization of the Flash, the great characterization of Aquaman. And for the first time since 2013, I am excited for the future of this DCEU. The problem is, this movie only made $93 million opening weekend. That is the lowest out of any of the DCEU films. It made less than Wonder Woman. It made less than Thor Ragnarok. And there's a lot of people saying, what does Warner Brothers do? And I'm jumping on board right as it's all crumbling down. This has an ensemble cast of Ezra Miller as the Flash, Jason Momoa as Aquaman, Ray Fisher as Cyborg, Ben Affleck as Batman, Henry Cavill Superman, Amy Adams, Lois Lane, Gal Gadot, Wonder Woman, Diane Lane as Martha Kent, J.K. Simmons, Commissioner Gordon. It has an ensemble cast. They got a great cast, and I love this cast. And I was so surprised at how well this film was done, and how people were saying, it's too short. Warner Brothers put a 2-hour mandate on the film where it had to come in under 2 hours. And people were like, how are you going to introduce the Flash? How are you going to introduce Cyborg? How are you going to introduce Aquaman in 2 hours? Well, other movies have done it in introduce characters in less than 2 hours. Toy Story is like an hour and a half. The Incredibles was like 2 hours and 20 minutes, and they had so many new characters. Guardians of the Galaxy had to introduce 5 new characters. Batman vs. Superman introduces these new characters, and they introduce these characters well. I loved The Flash, and he was so quippy. And there's a moment between The Flash and Batman where The Flash is like, you've done combat for 20 years, defended Gotham for 20 years. Wonder Woman has fought in World War I. She's been fighting for a long time. I don't fight people. I bump into them and run away. And Batman says to the Flash, okay, you don't have to fight, just save one man. Save one citizen. And after that, you'll know what to do. And this team aspect, we all have strengths, we all have weaknesses, is the backbone of Justice League. And these new characters, the Flash, the Cyborg, and Aquaman, are huge standouts for me. And I wasn't on board for a Flash, an Aquaman, a Cyborg movie, but now I am. Now I will be there day one, and I'm just sad that those might not happen. Aquaman is definitely happening because most of it's filmed. They're just doing special effects now in post-production. But Cyborg and Flash, there's a chance that those might be canceled due to the poor box office reception. This film cost an estimated $300 million to make, and more money to market. This needs to make at least $600 million to break even. This could be the first flop of the DCEU, and I am very sad because this is the best movie. My biggest problems going into this was Aquaman, and I've read Aquaman comics, but I've read the really old ones where he was basically red-headed Conan O'Brien fishman. And Jason Momoa's Aquaman is very different than that. That is the dark and gritty and the mysterious Aquaman. But he has jokes. He jokes with Batman, and I think these jokes in this tone, that you brought a pitchfork to the fight, I thought this was the strength in the script written by Chris Terrio and Joss Whedon was why I enjoyed Justice League. You had Cyborg was one of these guys who, this is a high school kid, he's a football star. He was supposed to have died in a car accident that killed his mom. His dad turns him into a Frankenstein's monster using this piece of ancient technology. And this character of this guy who is afraid of himself, he has powers he doesn't understand. This was a very intriguing character, and I hope they continue with this character. You look at the evolution of Henry Cavill's Superman, which I wasn't a fan, but he has to learn to be a hero. And I think that's great. I was a critic of Ben Affleck's casting, and I was they're talking to Josh Brolin. I think Josh Brolin would be a really good, dark, experienced Batman. They got Ben Affleck. I was not a fan, like most people, of Batman vs. Superman. Him as the leader of the Justice League, I am full on board, and I had such fun with this movie. This movie is not a perfect movie, but I had a lot of fun with this. My biggest complaint of this movie was it was very similar to the Avengers. You had this cube, this ancient cube that had powers that were extravagant, and these powers of the Mother Box and the Tesseract summons a henchman villain, Steppenwolf, Loki. You have all these superheroes that are reluctant to work together. They have to overcome their differences and work together, and the villain is ultimately a henchman of the big bad that's set up in later films, Darkseid and Thanos. This is very interesting because Joss Whedon picked up directing duties after Zack Snyder left, and he was the only director on the Avengers. But I can overlook these similarities because I've said many times, Howard Hawks, one of my favorite directors of Red River, His Girl Friday, he's like, there are 30 plots and you gotta focus on characters. DC has some of the best characters in the world with Superman, Batman, Aquaman, Wonder Woman. And these characters and this portrayal of the characters was the best I've seen in the DCEU film. And I am fully on board for Aquaman, Shazam, Flashpoint, whichever direction they're going in the future. I would highly recommend it. You can take your family, you can take your kids. 8.5 out of 10 is my personal opinion